You have some questions for me. Brauerizing. How? Why negative 18 dB? What's a dummy bus? Can I send to 2 buses? Is this parallel compression? That's great, but does it gent? All this and more right now.
Learn audio engineering. Learn audio now. Sound strategies to sound goals.
Hey, I'm Robert from Learn Audio Engineering, and earlier this year I did 2 videos on Brauerizing that got a lot of positive response and a lot of questions. So in this video, I'm gonna do my best to answer your viewer questions based on my understanding of the Brauerizing method. And no, I'm not Michael Brauer. I'm going to be answering these questions based off of the information revealed in his interviews, on his website, and through my personal experience using the method. If you're using Pro Tools or Logic and you want to get into Brauerizing, you want to give it a try, but you don't want to have to set up the session and do all the routing yourself, check the description below because I've got a link to my website and I'll send you some free Brauerizing templates. So let's get to it. Question 1, is Brauerizing suitable for all genres? Well, I would say that primarily what Michael Brauer does is rock, pop, and alternative music, but that's not to say that this can't be expanded onto different genres, but it's definitely going to give you that very modern, very pop sound. If you want your music to sound like it would be played on the radio, Brauerizing is probably a really good approach. If you're doing something like an extreme metal genre, something like gent, I'm sure you could tweak the approach to cater to that genre's needs. I don't know, can Brauerizing gent? If anyone has some gent stems they want to send to me to be Brauerized, please let me know and I will definitely make that video. Okay, question 2. Why do we calibrate to negative 18 dB? Well, this has to do with Michael Brauer working in the analog world. They would use the VU meters and calibrate the compressors around 0 dB VU. In the calibration process, he calibrates it so the compressor does about -1 and then he brings the gain back up to 0. The reason that we're using this is, one, in the analog world, negative 18 is sort of a standard and a sweet spot, but it also gives us a lot of headroom in the digital domain because 0 dB VU is the same as negative 18 dB full scale. So that gives us 18 dB of headroom. We're nowhere close to clipping the meters. Number 3, why move the threshold once you've calibrated it? To be honest, this is a bad habit of mine, and you probably shouldn't do it after you spend all that time calibrating. You should really just work into that. The whole point of calibrating and setting that threshold at a certain place is to get an indication of balance within the group. So if something's really hogging the compressor and causing it to, apply all this gain reduction, you want to turn that element down so that the instruments within that group are being compressed evenly. There's not one that's way ahead of the pack and that's holding everyone else down. So instead of changing the threshold, as I've done in some of my videos, I guess, bad habits, yes, better approach would be to lower that instrument and then have more even dispersion of compression among those instruments. Another reason to do this is it avoids mixing up. It avoids mixing to the ceiling. So, oh, I can't hear that thing, turn it up. No, I can't hear that thing, turn it up, right? We have that ceiling at 0 dB full scale, that the closer that we get to that, the less headroom we're gonna have, the less dynamics we're gonna have, and the more likely it's gonna be that we're gonna be clipping our signal. So instead, try and mix subtractively. If something's really grabbing your attention, just turn it down so that you can begin to hear all of the quieter instruments. Number 4, how do you unlink a stereo plugin? Well, in most DAWs, in your plugin menu, there should be a way to select it as a multi-mono plugin. I know in Logic, if you go to the plugin, then there's an option for stereo, there's an option for multi-mono. In Pro Tools, there's a whole menu that you can open your plugins in a multi-mono setting. And for some plugins, you can actually set them, and then within the plugin, there'll be like an MS feature or a dual left and right feature that you can switch it from being a stereo compressor. Okay, so the next 3 are related. The first one is, why not send the cymbals to A? I've heard this a couple times. Well, the B bus is the low frequency bus. Why am I sending the cymbals there? They're obviously high frequency information. Why shouldn't I send them to A? And the short answer is, do what feels good, man. Like, absolutely you can do that. If that's the way that you hear the drum kit and you want to give the cymbals a little bit of that shine from the A, from the Pultex and the 33609 or whatever, absolutely go ahead and do that. Brauerizing is all about exploring the groove and doing what feels good. So try stuff, don't feel boxed into the same formula and the same way of doing things. Remember that mixing is all about bringing out the emotion of the song. At least this is what Michael told me when I sent him an email last year asking him about the Brauerizing method. He was very succinct and to the point. At the end of the day, we're trying to sculpt the emotion of this piece of music. That's our job, and we shouldn't really worry too much about if we're doing everything correctly or if we're following the right formula. We should do what feels good and follow the path that guides us. Okay, so number 6, can you send something to 2 buses? Yes, and you can do it until latency kicks in. And this is one of the big differences and limitations of digital audio as opposed to analog audio. Instruments sent to multiple buses are going to interact in a different way. They're going to connect those buses and move in a different way or develop a slightly different character or flavor. So you absolutely can send things to 2 buses, but you should be aware that that's where things start to get a little tricky in the digital world. You have to really listen and make sure that you're not getting too much phase cancellation or latency between all these buses now. So that's when we start getting into the parallel process, because as it stands, just having the 4 buses, we don't have anything going parallel. But if we start sending things to B and A, that's when we start getting 2 signals running in parallel. That's when the limitations start to come in. So in Pro Tools, Brauer has noticed a considerable amount of latency when he starts introducing the parallel busing. And that is one of the reasons that he doesn't believe that this process can truly work in the box. However, he has had some better luck in DAWs such as Nuendo. So try it out in your DAW. Just be aware that the more fancy you start making this, the more chances for latency and phase destruction to ruin your mix. Number 7, can vocals go to A, B, C, or D? The short answer, yes. Brauer says that he starts with the A bus. If the Brauerizing thing doesn't work and it all falls apart, he can always just go back to the A bus and mix as if that was his stereo bus, just like he was taught to mix. A is his standard multi-bus, and he sends anything to that he needs to glue it up a little bit. So you could absolutely send the vocals to that in addition to the 2 verse compressors and the 3 chorus compressors. Question number 8, should I filter my buses? No. The buses are full bandwidth, he does not filter them. Each one of the buses contains a certain part of the song. So the C bus contains the center of the record. The drums and the bass, really the heart, the meat and potatoes of everything, is going to B, and the D is sort of the external stuff, the ambience, the ear candy as I like to call it. Each one of these 4 buses is a full frequency bandwidth but contains instruments that cater to a specific group. The compression that's going on in C is mainly catered to focus on the mid-range, even though there might be some low frequency and some high frequency information. That doesn't mean that he's filtering out 200 hertz on the guitars to make room for bus B. No, none of that's happening. This is mainly working through really good arrangement, that the pieces are already in their own lane and Michael's just separating them via this multiple bus compression. Number 9, why use a dummy bus? So Michael doesn't send everything to his stereo bus. Instead, he floats it, that's SSL for a bus send. He sends them to 4 different bus groups, each with their own compressor, and then they go into the stereo bus. So what I've created in the DAW for Pro Tools is a dummy bus. So this is a bus that I send all of the tracks to that goes nowhere. We don't hear the output. If I didn't do this and just had it to no output, in Pro Tools, we wouldn't get any sound. The tracks wouldn't play. So to avoid this, I just give them a location that goes nowhere, the computer's happy, it keeps playing. In Logic, you don't need to do this, I've found. When I created the templates, I created one for Pro Tools and one for Logic, and some people pointed out to me, you actually don't even need a dummy bus in Logic. You can just set each of the outputs to no output and the track still plays. That's really cool. So check in your DAW, you might not actually need a dummy bus. Good question. And finally, question 10, does Brauer still process the stereo bus? And I would have to say yes. There is plenty of information on this, of him using the stereo bus compressor or his Avalon 737, and I'm sure that he's got a few other tools that he likes to use. He's done with his Brauerized mix, he's absolutely gonna go to the stereo bus and maybe glue it together a little bit more. Brauerizing is a lot of fun, and it's a very creative process. And at the end of the day, I don't want you guys to feel boxed in or that you have to follow a specific formula to get the results you're looking for. Keep experimenting, keep trying new things, and see where it takes you. That's really the fun of mixing, and especially the fun of Brauerizing. One of the last philosophies that Michael shares that I really want to pass on to you guys is the idea of developing into the chorus. The chorus obviously is the biggest part of the song, and as the song progresses, it should take the listener from a single point and have them just explode into the chorus. And he does this in a couple ways. For one, he introduces more lows and highs coming into the chorus. The mix itself seems to expand to fill the space. And we do this by good arrangement, but this is also enhanced by mixing. So we have three dimensions, right? We have the frequency, we have the panning width, and we have the frequency depth. And as the chorus hits, we're just gonna expand all this stuff, introduce more extreme frequencies, high and low, make the mix wider and make it deeper, maybe add a longer reverb or something like that. But have it so that as the chorus hits, the mix literally grows in size to just be all around the listener. This has been a philosophy that I've really enjoyed and I wanted to pass on to you guys. So that's all for this video. If you have any other questions about Brauerizing that I missed, please let me know in the comments. Remember to subscribe if you're new with notifications on for fresh weekly content each week. It really helps me out when you do that. As always, thanks so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in the next one.